What's up guys, this is Casey bringing you another Blender tutorial for the day. Today we're going to be making a very simple seahorse, and then we're going to animate that seahorse. And you might be thinking, wow, that sounds like a big project, but it's really not. We're going to be using something called the skin modifier. If you've never used it before, now's your chance to learn a very useful technique in Blender. So, without further ado, let's get started. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to add in a background image of a seahorse. Obviously, that's what we're making. It's going to make it easier. So let me go to my reference images. Get to see all my fun reference images. Okay, so this is my seahorse image that I have found on Google. Just try and find one that, this is like a drawing or an animation or something. It's very 2D, that's why I liked it. I didn't want something that was like looking at the side or had a weird perspective. I just wanted this very flat image because that's what I want to use as my reference. So go ahead, go to Google or your favorite search engine and check out some pictures of seahorses, and when you find one, load it up into Blender so we can use it as a reference. Alright, so next thing we need to do is actually just delete our cube, so I'm going to hit the X button, or the X key, and delete it. And I want to add a plane, so I'm going to hit Shift A, add a mesh, and plane. Now I need to rotate this plane so I can see all four vertices, so I'm going to rotate on the X axis by 90 degrees. And if I tab into edit mode, I'm going to want to delete all of the vertices except for one. So I'm using B for my box select tool, and I'm just clicking and dragging, grab all three vertices, and then I'm going to hit X vertices. That'll delete everything but this one little tiny vertice. So once I have this one little vertice, I just want to place it somewhere about in the middle of my seahorse. Something like that. Because now what we need to do is actually add our skin modifier. So if I go to my modifier tab that looks like a little wrench and click add modifier, over here where it says generate and it gives you all these modifiers, we're going to use the one called skin. So if I click on that, you'll see that it basically has turned my one little vertex into a box, into a cube. Why did we just delete a cube if we're going to go right back to using a cube? Well, you'll see as soon as we start to work with it. Basically, what this skin modifier does is it's creating a shell or skin for vertices and edges. So as we model with one vertice and one edge, it's going to create the outside for it. It has a lot of other nifty features that we'll get to, but for right now we just want to actually do some editing. So I'm going to hit Z to go into my wireframe view, and with that vertice selected, I'm going to extrude by hitting the E key. Now you should see that your rectangle or your cube starts to turn into a rectangle. That's exactly what we want. So I'm going to extrude somewhere right about in here, just a little below the neck region. Now obviously this cube is a little small for what we're looking for, so we're going to have to adjust it. And to adjust it, normally you would want to just scale it, which is using the S key, but the S key doesn't work when you're using skin. So if I hit S, you can see that nothing changes. It doesn't move anything. The S key does not work. You have to do something a little differently. You have to hit Control A, and then you can start to resize your object. Now it resizes it on every axis. So you can see it's basically still just a cube on the top or a square. However, you can resize it in different directions. So if I hit like Control A on the X axis, I can just get X movement, or Control A on the Y axis, I can get just Y axis. So you still have a lot of control. You just have to remember that it's Control A instead of S. So now that I've resized this a little bit, let me go back to my original one and resize that one. Control A, and resize that one up about here. Now one thing that I want to do before I go too far is you can see that there's a red dash circle around one of my vertices. This is what's called your root point. Your root point is going to decide a lot of things later in your animation when it creates your armature. It's going to decide where your main bone stems from, which is very important when you're doing animation. It can also change the actual look of the design that you're going for. So we want our main point to be that very first vertex that we created. So I've already got that one selected. Over here where I'm at my skin modifier, I'm just going to click Mark Root. And you can see that that dash circle has now went down to the bottom vertex instead of the top vertex. We may have to move it again later. I don't know if it will change when I extrude downwards, but for now we're just going to be doing some extruding and scaling. So as I begin to extrude and scale a little bit, you can see that it kind of rotates along with me, which is exactly what I want it to do. And I'm just going to scale it there, bring it about here, scale it down, about here, scale that one down a little bit, move it down, something like that. Bring it in, scale it down, bring it down again, scale it down, and then we'll bring it out to the end and scale it in just a little bit more. So we pretty much have our top half done. Now we just got to do our bottom half. So I'm going to extrude, and you can see that it moved my root point again, and I don't want it to move, but obviously we're gonna have to redo it a little bit. So let me click on my original vertex and click Mark Root one more time. And now we're just going to extrude a little bit more and scale that in and extrude, extrude, and extrude, extrude. Start to scale that in a little bit. We'll extrude here, we'll scale it in a little bit more. Extrude, extrude, scale it just a bit. Extrude there, there, pull it in just a little bit again. And finally, the tip of the tail. Okay, so now we get to actually look at it. This is what our final project pretty much looks like. This is basically just a very rough outline of a seahorse. However, I do see that there's a little bit of an edge here. I'm going to see if I can maybe fix that a little bit. Maybe. I don't know if it's going to be possible, but we'll try. Yeah, we'll pull this up just a bit. Scale it out maybe a little bit. There we go. Okay, so now that we have that, we have our basic shape, we have our skin and our modifier, and everything's running and good. So the next thing that you need to know is that there's a smooth shading button. You cannot smooth shade because you have no faces, technically. They're all a part of the modifier. So the only way to smooth shade is with this little button in your modifying tab. So if I click that, you can smooth shade it. And it looks okay, I guess. Let's even further that by going and doing a Subdivision Surface modifier. So now we've smoothed it out pretty considerably. And it actually lets us go back in just a little bit and kind of resize things. So now that we have our subsurf, we can really kind of see where we have sizing issues. So I'm just kind of moving vertices around a little bit, trying to get it as close as I can. It's not going to be perfect because this is I would say I normally wouldn't use a skin modifier for doing detailed work like this. It's usually for quick things or, you know, real basic animations, but it was easy enough when I did the practice tutorial, so hopefully hopefully it looks okay. Let's see if I can get that middle section just a little bit bigger without killing it. Like that. There. So there we go. We have our basic seahorse. Go back to 1. It doesn't have any detail or anything like that, but it is a seahorse, which is cool. So in a matter of just a couple minutes, you know, we just made the outline of a seahorse, and there it is. It's right in front of us. So the next thing that we actually want to do is create an armature, which is going to allow us to animate this. So if I tab out of edit mode, back into object mode, my create armature button now becomes active. So if I click that, it automatically adds a bone structure to this model, which is awesome, because now we can actually go in and pose if we want to, which is in our pose mode. So basically, your animation is completely up to you now. It's whatever you want to do with it. For the basis of this tutorial, we're going to make it fairly simple. I'm going to add a path. Pull that out on the x-axis a little bit more. Something like that. I need to rotate it 180. Whoops. Rotate it on the Z 180. Like that. Actually, I can get rid of my background image now. So that's not in the way. Alright, so now I'm just making a quick path. Something like this. Real basic, real quick. Explaining animation can take a very long time, and that's a video for another time. So I'm just trying to make this as quick as possible so that you guys have something cool to play around with and something to show for. Okay, so now I'm going to select my bone after I've created my path. Oh, actually, one thing. On our path, when we have it selected, we need to hit Control A and apply the rotation and scale. We can do that with our actual seahorse as well. Let's see, Control A, rotation and scale. That's going to help in our animation, so it's not so crazy. And then we want to click on our bone structure and go to pose mode. So once you're in pose mode, you can start selecting bones individually and moving them however you would like this, or like this. And this one right here, where it looks like there's two bones kind of jumbled up together, this is my main bone right here. This is what we created our root point for. If we move this bone, we move our entire structure. Whereas if we move this bone, it's just the top half, or this bone, it's just the bottom half. So we gotta find that one little root bone so that we can add our new constraint. That's in our bone constraint tab. It looks like a bone with a chain on it. And we're going to follow path. Obviously our target is going to be our NURBS path that we created. We want to click the follow curve button, and you'll probably notice that as soon as you click that button, it's going to turn your model. It's going to make your model face weird directions. That's because we need to set the forward and the up angles. So forward, in this case, we're going from right to left, so it's going to be -X. And our up is still our Z, so we can leave the Z alone. Now if I click Animate Path, and everything works right, and Blender is going to be very, very nice, and it's going to work, let's hit our play button. Aha! So now it follows the path. So obviously I have this set to 250 frames. I believe the path is only set for 100 frames. So once it gets to 100, it stops. Now if you want to change that, you can obviously click on your path, go to your curve tab, and right down here it says path animation. You can set the frames. So if I want it to be 250 frames to match what I've already got, I can do that and then hit the play button. You'll see it moves a lot slower because it's trying to go all the way to 250 frames. And there we go. So of course there's a lot of other options that you can use for paths, like evaluation time, where if I set that up to, like, say, let's go 20. So now it starts out where it looks like it's already halfway or a little bit up the path. Okay, so I'm going to reset this back down to maybe like 60. Is that too fast? No, 60 is okay. 60 is alright. And then I'm going to set my end frames down here to 60, so that it'll just loop over and over again. Like this. So now obviously there's a lot more that you can do with the actual bones. So let's go ahead a couple of frames. Something like here. What's that? Frame 11. So now I'm going to just start clicking on a couple of bones. Oh, actually, you know what? Before you click on any bones or set any keyframes, go back to your very first frame. If this is how you want your model to look like, you need to hit the A key to select all of your bones, hit the I key to insert a keyframe, and then we hit whole character. So that sets its basic position. It's not the rest position, which is something I won't get into, but when it's posed, that means at frame 0, this is what it will look like. If we didn't set that, and we went to frame 10 and messed with it, and then set that position, it would always be in that position, if that makes any sense. Hopefully, maybe. Sorry if this is confusing, guys. Animation can be incredibly confusing, especially if you're just starting out. So I'm trying to skip over parts that you may not need to know just yet to just get this working for you. Okay, so now we can go to frame 11, like that. And now I want to move a couple of these bones. So I'm going to move this one out a little bit, this one out just a little bit, maybe move his tail back just a bit. And I want his head to bob just a little bit like this. Maybe his nose to come down just a bit, like that. So now that I have his position set up, I do the same thing again. I hit the A key to select all my bones. I hit the I key to insert a keyframe, and I'm inserting the whole character. Boom. So now I can move a little bit more forward. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. So every 11 frames, I'm going to move it just a little bit. So now let's start to maybe move him back just a little bit. Give him that kind of position. And a little bit in like that. And move his head back down. And that should be, let's maybe arch his back just a little bit, and hit the A key, I, whole character. Then we'll go 11 more frames, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Alright, so now we need to unfurl him just a little bit more. Gonna go here, a little bit there, a little bit there. We'll move his back this way a little bit, and we'll bob his head up like that. And now we'll A key, I key, whole character. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. So now we can bring him back in. Let's rotate that in, rotate this one in, we'll rotate that one back in, we'll pull his back in just a little bit, pull it down just a bit, and A key, I key, whole character. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. This will probably be the last frame that we set up. So let's make him unfurl a little bit more. Something like this. And a little like that. By the way, I'm just rotating these bones. I'm clicking on them, hitting the R key to rotate. And right about there. So I key, whole character. And just like that, if I click back to the beginning of my animation and hit the play button, I have created a very simple, effective animation. I have used pretty much nothing but the skin modifier and a path, and I've created a seahorse that is floating around in the water poorly, but you know, you get the idea. This can be an incredibly useful modifier to use, the skin modifier. It doesn't have to necessarily be used in animation either. If you have a really sort of complex object that you're working on, say like wrought iron gates that have a really complicated bar set up on the inside, or let's say you're working on a park bench and the arms of the park bench are kind of, you know, weird circular things like that. You can use the skin modifier and just pop it out real quick, smooth it out, and you don't even have to worry about the animation. It just makes a nice object for you. So it has a lot of uses, but I'm sure most of you guys will probably be more interested in playing around with the animations for it. So if you don't know what the skin modifier is, hopefully you learned a little bit more about it. One last thing I do want to mention before I let you guys go is that, let's go to the skin modifier. So if I now go to my edit mode and I want to branch this out one more time, so let's go to my Z. So I've got this one vertex here is branched twice, one here and one here. If I branch it out a third time and extrude it this way, you can see that it gets a little crazy. Now this is actually pretty good. Normally it doesn't turn out this good. This is when the skin modifier can start to break down a little bit. It can get a little hard to deal with. However, there's this nice branch smoothing option, and turning that branch smoothing up and down will usually solve most of those problems. So you can see how it started to change the geometry around it. So if I liked it the way it was, I could keep it that way. If it created problems with my geometry or things were overlapping, like if I went back to here and I didn't like it, I could just go in here and branch smooth it a little bit. And you can see where I've got some weird faces going on in this one. If I keep going up on my branch smoothing, it smooths those faces out. It gives me more uniform geometry. So if you're making something complicated with the skin modifier, just remember to use your branch smoothing whenever possible. Alright, so I think that's pretty much it. Whoop, I forgot to come out of edit mode. There we go. So I think that's pretty much it for this tutorial. I hope you guys learned a little bit about the skin modifier, and maybe you guys made a seahorse or something better and got it to animate, and you had a whole lot of fun. Thank you guys for watching.